Welcome to Healthcare IT Today. I'm John Lynn, together with my colleague and friend, Colin. The world of technology and healthcare, ever-changing in new and novel ways, and that's why we love this stuff. So join us as we discuss the latest healthcare and health IT news, meshed together in new ways, which help generate ideas and new perspectives. Plus, we'll have a little fun along the way. Today, we're going to be talking about the upcoming Health 2024 conference in Las Vegas. And be sure to follow the show on social media at the hashtag HITSM and our personal accounts at TechGuy and at Colin_Hung. Plus, check out our 18 years of health IT content at healthcareittoday.com. I know you've missed coming to Vegas, Colin. So you excited to be back in Vegas soon?
I am. Vegas is it's just become, if I don't go to Vegas in a year, it's something's wrong, like
It's been a year,
like a
right?
pandemic has happened or something, because every conference has Vegas on the circuit at some point. So, yes, happy to come back to in Vegas, happy to check out the new restaurants, but also just obviously happy to see everyone at Health. It's always a lot of fun to do that.
It's been almost a year for you, right? Like it has been a long time. We've done it. There hasn't been that many in Vegas lately.
No, it's only this year will end up only being two, which is still twice in the same year. But
I
I mean,
guess.
we always have fun in Vegas. The last time when I was there, of course, the Golden Knights were just ending the season.
Oh, that's right. You came for that. Well, that was a sufferer for you.
So before we dive in, John, I gotta say, so is it HLTH or is it health in your mind? You know,
Yes, I think they came out, I forget, 2 years ago or something, and they, like, clarified. They said it's health. But here's the ironic part. When I say health, people are like, "What," like, but if I say health, the HLTH conference, then they're like, "Oh, okay." So, like, officially, I think they want us to say health, and it makes sense why it should be called health. But, sometimes depending on the context, they don't always pick up when you say health because they're like, "Wait, are you talking about our health?" Or, like, it comes off wrong. But if you say HLTH, it's very clear. Oh, you mean the conference. Got you.
yes. I find the same. I think people who are on the circuit, when you say health, they kind of know the context. But I think for anyone who doesn't normally go to any healthcare conferences or is outside of healthcare, yeah, I go with HLTH, and then people go, "Oh yeah, I've seen the ads. I've seen they have they have the really colorful advertising." I'm like, yes, that's the one.
Yeah, for
Mm.
sure.
Well, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. And as health brings together lots of parts of the ecosystem, right, John? There are providers, payers, pharma companies, device makers, investors, vendors of all shapes and sizes, and of course, startups. Is that a good thing, in your opinion, that the conference attracts such a diverse audience?
It's good for health, like to be able to have such a diverse, and that was the vision, to be fair. That's what he did with Money 2020 and bringing all the financial services people together. But I'm not sure that the synergies across these are as good as some of the other industries. The synergies across pharma and provider organizations is as good. And so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out over time because when you bring together all of those groups across such a diverse, device makers and pharma and life sciences and providers and health IT and direct to consumer, like there's a lot of noise then, right? And so when you meet people, you're like, oh, I mean, it's a little interesting to meet a pharma person if you're a provider organization, but it's not really actionable in the same way as if you met a fellow CIO at a health system that's dealing with some of the same problems as you. So I'm interested to see, maybe I'm wrong. Obviously, that he's proven it in, Money 2020 and other industries. And maybe there is a lot of value that's not where we sit as much in the provider space. Of course, maybe we should be drawing more inspiration from pharma and from all these others. But, I don't know. I'm interested to see how it plays out. Will real partnerships come from it, or will there be subgroups within the health conference that are really valuable? Will that kind of break out? And that kind of happens anyways because they throw a party for those people. So that happens, of course, within the different subgroups. But I don't know. I'm a little skeptical.
Yeah, I mean, intellectually, I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be cool, right? Like, it to see such a diverse group of people brought together. It is interesting because you never know what all of a sudden may emerge when you put a group of people like this together, right? Like, especially with the consumer wearables folks being there, and some of the the life sciences folks. So I think I'm interested to see how this goes intellectually, but from a business standpoint, other than for investors and people who are maybe like that, I don't see how a lot of actual business is actually going to happen at the conference. I think it's much more of an intellectual one to say, oh, let's talk about the different, let me hear about the different problems and all these different contexts, right? And some of the challenges that maybe we're all facing together, but maybe approaching them different ways. That could be exciting. But I don't see how somebody who really just focuses on pharma is really going to get a lot of value out of being here, because like it's not every pharma or life sciences company is here, right? It's only a few. And if you only go to the payer side, there's only a few of them here too. Like it's so diverse. I'm not sure about the business side of health. So, but I'm excited to see what it's going to be like, because this is a much more diverse audience than even last year's event. So I'm curious.
Yeah, I think the other thing that will be interesting to see play out is provider organizations don't have the same money they had to be able to
Hmm.
go to conferences like this. Whereas I think the pharma, the med device companies, and obviously the venture capitalists, et cetera, they have more of that money. So is just by fact of budget, the health conference is going to become more of a pharma, life sciences, med device, a payer side of things, kind of conference because those organizations have more money. I think it's also indicative when you look at like the newsletter that they just started sending out. All of the news was life science related, and that's going to alienate the provider organizations that aren't really interested in the latest trends in life sciences and and their partnerships. So and maybe that's where the money is. So that maybe makes sense in a big way. But I'm interested on the provider side if they get a bit alienated by it and if they just can't show up, quite frankly, because their budgets are having issues.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of look back, right, and see. The nice thing about it being in the fall is that there aren't, it's now been months since J.P. Morgan, since CES, since HIMSS, and frankly, Vive, right? And so there isn't sort of anything in the fall that brings everyone together like health can. So they do benefit from being one of the biggest in the fall season. And
Yeah.
so I think there is something to be said about that, because if you can't make one of those ones in the spring, fall's your only chance. Like this is your last chance to do that. And um, I actually find it kind of nice, right? Because you bump into some of these folks in the early spring, and now you get a chance to see them again in the fall. So I do like the timing of health, and I think that kind of as kudos to them for carving out this particular season for it. But John, let me ask you this. So other than, I know that your number one is always seeing people and meeting new people. That's always your number one thing about going to conferences. But
It
but
should
other than that,
be.
what else are you looking forward to the most at Health this year?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. They always put on a good production. Everyone knows that. Health knows how to produce a good conference that's full of energy and excitement and is well branded and all of those things. I'm interested to see some of the sessions. He announced 400 speakers. I think I read, which is just man, it's hard to process. And health is very particular about the types of speakers. They're all about the big name speakers. So I'm interested to see, which of those kind of cut through the noise with 400 speakers, like that's a lot of them, right? So, and how many are actually sharing really useful information versus kind of the dog and pony show that sometimes happens when they're like, they trot out the CEO to announce this, which isn't to me that exciting. It doesn't get down to the nuts and bolts of what's really happening. And so, that's what I'll be looking for is some of the sessions that are more practical focused as opposed to the dog and pony show, and yeah, quite frankly, stroking the ego of some big names, right? And to be fair, like I love some of the pop stars. I'm okay with some entertainment ones, right? Like when they have some diabetes connection or whatever, right? I don't mind that, right? I think those are entertaining as well.
The speakers have always been interesting. You're right. I mean, when I heard that announcement too, like 400 speakers, that is just insane. That's a lot of panels, right? Is what I was thinking. There's a lot of panels that are being run, but yeah, the keynotes. I mean, they are always kind of very interesting. They always have some really big. I won't say celebrity because that's not the right term, but big, but definitely people who have their name in lights, right? These are people that I'm certainly interested in seeing. Chelsea Clinton, SEMA is going to be there, Lance Bass, right? Like it's what a diverse uh, set of keynotes just in those three names. But what I'm looking forward to the most, other than the puppy park, of course, is I as a marketer, I like you said, I am very interested to see the branding and the way an event can be pulled off in healthcare. I mean, I know some people are kind of like, well, health is a bit flashy, it's a bit much. And maybe, I mean, it'd be hard to argue against that, but
It
I
turns
just
out some
like
providers, right, where they're like, why are we spending money on this when patients are paying for it in some way? Yeah, that's a sentiment from some of the providers I've heard.
I can definitely see that, but as a marketer, I just appreciate the effort, right? And so I like just observing how much effort they put into the branded mural, the entranceway into the exhibit hall, the way that the signage is done. I really do think as a marketer, it's a nice lesson to see what's possible, right? And it just kind of for healthcare, anyways, it's one of the few shows that we go to on our circuit that's kind of like this, right? That's it's almost like being in Disney World, right? In a way. And so I enjoy that as a marketer. I'm kind of like, oh, these are the folks that are really pushing the envelope visually and from an event standpoint. So I like that about health. And then of course the exhibit hall for me. I'm like, almost like reverse. You're talking about the sessions, John, and I'm talking about the exhibit hall. I'm looking forward to walking through the exhibit hall and seeing some of the interesting companies that are going to be there this year.
Yeah, I think, Colin, you might need to put on your healthcare nerd t-shirt because you just described health as Disney World. But the other interesting thing as far as the production is that HIMSS is going to be in the same location. What is it, 5 months after, 6 months after? I forget the exact, it's in March right after it, and so it'll be interesting to compare the two and how they produce it because you're right, health does a good job really branding it and creating an experience and a feeling that that you go away with when you go to it. So, yeah, I mean, it's always, going to be interesting what unique things they come up with this year, right? And how they approach it. Yeah, and I think it will be amazing to go to the exhibit hall. When you look at the list of companies that they have on there, that it's just extraordinary how many there are there. So, it's gonna be a spectacle. And I always love the exhibit hall because the Venetian, I was counting, I was somewhere around 50 plus times that I've been to that exhibit hall. Everything from a corporate event all the way through, CES and HIMSS and health, et cetera. And so I've seen it in I think every configuration, but they'll probably surprise me with something.
That's the thing. I think what I like about health is that they're not afraid to push the envelope and be somewhat unapologetic about it. And that allows them to be bold. Not everything works. I'll give them that, right? Not everything they try works, but they're willing to push it, right? Whether it's the puppy park, the little spa area, the rest area, all those kinds of things. They were the first to kind of bring that to healthcare. And it always ends up being interesting to see what they do this year.
Colin, should I be controversial? Like, I'm not a puppy park guy. I'm not really
Oh.
into puppies. I had bad experience as a kid, so I'm not anti puppy park. I'm glad it brings other people joy, and I'm not against animals, but I'm just not a puppy park guy.
yeah, I'm a sucker for it. So what can I
I'm
say? I
gonna get
love
all the
puppies.
hateful comments now. I'm not against puppies. I'm glad other people enjoy it, but
You're not anti-puppy, you're just not pro puppy park, right? Like
yeah,
that's
I just don't need it. I'd rather have a chocolate bar, thanks.
there you go. Hey, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Healthcare IT Today with John Lynn and Colin Hung. Today, we're discussing the health conference, or HLTH, if you like, that's coming up in Las Vegas in a few weeks. So, John, is there a topic or a trend that you're going to be paying particular attention to or investigating while you're down at health?
Yeah, I would say the one that I'm kind of interested to see, and health has always been kind of a haven for this topic for quite a while, and that's kind of the retail health, direct to consumer, kind of these new models, new-ish models, if you will, or like different approaches from different companies to the healthcare, providing healthcare services. And so we know what's happened in those spaces. It's not been pretty. Go check out our previous episode about retail health. It's been a challenging time. So I'm interested to see who's still showing up and what are those conversations? What are they saying in the conversations about what they're planning to do, what they're not planning to do anymore, how they're going to modify it or approach it in a different way? Because I don't think it's dead, even though we did a whole episode on that. And, it's certainly going through challenges and it's changed in a lot of ways. So I'm interested to see, are there going to be some new approaches to that are pretty novel? I think there could be, and there could be some interesting partnerships where, you're like, oh, I didn't expect that from these two organizations. So that's what I'm kind of looking for is this retail health discussion to see where has it gone.
Hmm. Yeah, I can't argue with you there. Given everything that's happened with retail health, I'm curious to see what the sentiment is. Is this
Sure.
sort of is this a dip? Are we witnessing the twilight, or is it just sort of no, everything's going well and we're actually about to hit another rise? I'm curious to know that. I'm very curious to get a pulse on what people are thinking about the recent lawsuit against Epic.
Um,
And it's not so much I'm on I'm curious. I don't really care about what side you're on or what, like I'm more about what do you think that the ramifications of this are going to be, right? And I'm very curious to see what people will say to me, obviously off the record. I think most people don't want to even touch this one on the record, but just to see what that is doing for the industry. I mean, it's such high profile. It's been all over the news. Even mainstream news has picked this up. So I'm curious to kind of get a sentiment, especially from this diverse of an audience, to see what people think. I'm curious to know what payers think. Like they don't really have a skin in the game, really. I'm curious to know what they think about this. Right? Is it just like, oh, it's a nothing story, or no, it's a big deal, right? So for me, that's what I'm going to be casually asking people about, just to kind of hear what the opinions are.
Yeah, I think that you're right, and it brings up what will be a really important topic, which is this question of interoperability, which is kind of a healthcare term. It's interesting how healthcare kind of adopted interoperability as its own, but like the idea of data sharing is a big topic in every industry. And when should it be shared? How should it be shared? How can it be monetized? How will it not? Like these are going to be really interesting discussions. And this is where actually having pharma and life sciences and payers and providers all in one place is an interesting conversation because they are the people who want the data in a lot of ways. And in some ways, the provider organizations want the data from, pharma and from payers. So I think that whole data discussion, which particle health and Epic are a one example of that, and that discussion of should I have access to it? Do I count as a use? I mean, it was fascinating that particle health used an insurance company, a payer that should have access to the data to justify the other use case, the other examples that they're using. So, anyway, there's a lot of data ownership, data usage discussion that's going to happen. to your point, a lot of it's going to probably happen at the special Thai restaurant over on Flamingo that they all go to. It's really, everyone loves it for some reason, like, but it's going to happen in those dinners probably as much as anywhere. But yeah, that's going to be a huge discussion around data, ownership, sharing, and then leveraging it for AI to be able to create awesome use cases.
And I'm just curious to see. I mean, for in the health IT world, it's a big deal, right? Like it, but is it a big deal overall in healthcare, right? Like, are we, is it even moving the needle in other ones? I would assume it will, but I'm curious to know, right? Like, are we just sort of living in our own bubble, right? To think this is like super earth moving news here in our space, but life sciences, like what, what is this?
They probably have
Yeah.
other examples. They're like, yeah, we've dealt with that for a while. What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I'm curious to learn about that. I'm also curious to see, it's always interesting to kind of see what startups are coming into the new space, what kind of innovations they're bringing. So I'm kind of curious to check out the startup area, just to see where, is it 100% AI? Is it still around patient access, which were two of the big themes from last year, or have we moved on to something else now? Are startups really focusing on a different area and addressing a different challenge this year. So that's the other thing I'm kind of looking forward to at this year's event.
Put your money on AI.
You're going to put money on AI? Well, on that note, John, are there any companies that you think will be making news or that you're going to keep your eye on while at Health?
Yeah, I've been fascinated by Clear's efforts in identity management, ID.me's in that space as well. There's a number of others, but the identity and be able to provide some sort of identity management is super interesting. And Clear's been partnering with everyone and their dog, it seems like, I'm interested to see how that plays out and how that really fleshes out in the products that they're offering. So I think that's one that could be really interesting. They probably have some new partnerships that they're going to announce. The other one, I'm interested that, and this is more like a category, is like the telehealth space and the teledocs of the world, the AMLs of the world. Like that's an interesting space, and what are they going to do to stay viable? Will we see some legislation maybe because there's a drop dead date I think at the end of the year again. We're waiting for another extension or firming up. So could one of the telehealth companies come and offer something pretty interesting? That would be a cool thing to see. And here's one that I was like, wow, this is at health, and there's a whole section for oral health, which I'm suffering some oral health issues right now, so maybe that's why it was top of mind. But like Colgate's going to be at health, and you're like, what's Colgate doing at health? I don't know. I'm interested to see, right? Like it is pretty curious because oral health is an important part of our health, the more than we want to admit, I think, in many cases. And there's been a lot of information out there, so I mean, it's kind of novel to see, oh, Colgate's there, what are they doing? I'll be interested to see what they say.
I mean, hard to argue there. I'm curious to know what Colgate's going to be showing there or what they're going to be saying while at the conference. That's kind of a unique one. I mean, a couple other unique ones. I'm interested to see what Peloton, is going to be. They're going to be there. I'm kind of curious to see what they're going to be talking about or
You gonna
demonstrating.
ride the bike? Are you gonna hop up there and do some
Might
spin?
Yeah, why not? While I'm there, I got a workout in. No, I'm kidding. In fact, all I need to do is probably walk back to my hotel room for that and work. That's enough of
That's
a
enough
workout.
fitness for you.
And then obviously Best Buy Health. But I'm curious to kind of see what the consumer B2C kind of companies, what they're showing. Because that is not an area that I got a chance to see a lot of. And so I'm going to take advantage of that while at Health. I'm also going to be stopping in and making sure I check in with can we call them the big three of AI in healthcare? Nabla, Abridge, and Microsoft Nuance. I want to see what they're up to, kind of see what new things they may be announcing or the work they've been doing, some of the case studies they might have. One of the couple of the interesting names being obviously Canadian, Point Click Care is going to be there. Kind of curious to see and what they're up to. And TELUS Health, which is sort of a
Ooh,
giant in the Canadian space, but
big
really
one.
isn't that big in the US. They're there. So I'm kind of curious to see if they've got a booth or what they're going to be showing off. And then there's just some other companies like the SureScripts of the world, Informatica, Televox. Just want to see kind of catch up with them. Those are companies that I just haven't spoken to in a while. So just kind of curious to see what they're going to be talking about at Health.
Yeah, you're right. The ambient clinical voice ones, the AI medical scribe, that's moving so quickly. It's always great to catch up with them and see like what's new, what's the new feature, what's the evolution, how is the adoption going, et cetera. What's next for them. I think that's going to be a huge space. Um, the other one that is interesting for me is some of the cloud providers.
Hmm.
Just to see what AWS and Google Cloud, Azure, what they're all doing in the space and what they're gonna. Are they just looking at partnerships? Are they going to announce something interesting, with it? That'll be fun to watch. There's also, like you talked about startups. I think we're going to see a large variety of smaller companies at Health that could be quite interesting. There's one that popped out to me in one of our outreaches before the event. It's called The Garage, which, I love the callback to startup, The Garage, like everything started in a garage. I don't know if that was their intent, but they have a population health product, right? And I love that scrappy startup. And in the population health space, it makes us a lot of sense because the data is now there. It's available to do some really cool stuff. So I'm excited to see startups like that you haven't heard about. I've never heard about the garage before. I'm interested to see what they have to offer. So, there's things like that are really fun to see. It's interesting. I like both spectrums too, though. Like, I want to see what NTT and NTT data, what they're doing, right? And what they're offering organizations. The large companies that are advising them and advising healthcare organizations. You have both spectrums there, which I think is fun.
Yeah. No, I mean, talk about your smorgasbord of companies, right? Like everyone's going to be there. I'm almost 100% positive there'll be lots of companies that I'm probably never heard of, just because we don't play in those spaces that I'm going to be curious to just find out what they do. So I'm definitely looking forward to spending, you know, most of my time in the exhibit hall talking with people and chatting with them around all these topics. So just looking forward to being in Vegas.
So here's a bonus question for you, Colin. What do you
Okay.
think's the best swag item you're gonna get at Health? Do you think it's gonna
Oh,
be heavy swag, or is it gonna
oh.
be kind of an anti-swag? In the past, they haven't had, I mean, I got these Hawaiian cookies. That was the past one. That was the winner for me. They were delicious with the chocolate cover. Yum. But do you think it's gonna be a lot of swag or not?
No, I don't think so. I think the trend has been less swag over the last little while. I mean, I think we're going to see our fair share of water bottles and power bank
The
things and,
pins.
the cables and stuff like that. I think there'll be those. But in terms of new swag, I don't think so. I don't think this doesn't strike, Health has never struck me as the place where people have the custom printed t-shirts and those kinds of
Yeah.
things that you see at other
You're gonna get
conferences.
the record one. I think
Oh
that
yeah, the
was.
vinyl. Yeah, yeah. They probably will have that. But I think what we'll see more is, which is a growing trend, is those kinds of swag where you're putting together something for a charity or from a nonprofit, right? So whether it's like the pencil cases, or the school supplies, or whether it's medical supplies, those kinds, I think we'll see a few of those. And I think, as you just said, I think we'll see a lot of food swag, right? I think it's like custom printed cookies, cupcakes, espresso and drinks. I think more and more people are going for those kinds as giveaways because those are useful, right? People really do appreciate all these items because, walking around the exhibit hall is thirsty work. So
Yeah, you lose 5 pounds walking and you gain 5 pounds eating. Yeah, it's something like that.
exactly, exactly. There's only so many brandy cookies I can eat. Although I haven't reached my limit yet.
I
So
was gonna say, not for me. Depends on the cookie.
Uh,
There's some bad ones out there.
well, I look forward to seeing you in person in Vegas, and undoubtedly we'll have to find time to record something together. So that'll be fun, John.
Absolutely.
All right, then. Well, thanks to all of you who tuned into this episode of Healthcare IT Today. You can find out more details about our show by checking out the programs page on healthcarenowradio.com. And please share your voice and engage with the community at healthcareittoday.com and on social media using the hashtag HITSM. I'm Colin Hung, along with my friend and Health IT collaborator, John Lynn. Thanks for listening and have a great week.